Over the last 3 weeks, we've been talking about this phrase, let's go, right? And we've said that when Jesus says let's go, it's different than when I say let's go. I say let's go to get people hyped up, to get people excited. But Jesus says let's go to send people out. In fact, we haven't really said it this way, but this is really what we've been kind of saying the whole week. Following Jesus isn't just about believing, it's also about going. It's about telling others. And yet for most of us, when it comes to telling someone else about who Jesus is and what he means to us, well, most of us feel unqualified. We feel awkward. We feel even nervous about this sort of thing because we start to think, I think we imagine that we have to know everything. We feel like we need to know more. If we're going to talk about Jesus, like we need to know more. Or we need to say the perfect words in the perfect order, or we need to have the answer to every potential question they might hit us back with. And because of these kinds of thoughts, a lot of Christians who genuinely have a relationship with Jesus, who genuinely love Jesus and want to tell others about him, because of those kinds of questions, those become obstacles, and we never actually have a conversation about who Jesus is and what he's done. And this is so interesting to me because we talk about all kinds of other things that we love all the time, don't we? We talk about our favorite sports teams. We talk about our kids. We talk about our grandkids. And have I shown you a picture of my grandkid lately? Right? This is Luca. Say, hey, Luca. We talk about our favorite restaurants. In fact, if you know me, and I seem like I'm always working this into a sermon, I know. But we talk about things that we love. For instance, you guys know I love Chick-fil-A, which is why I talk about it with my family. I talk about it with my friends. I talk about it with complete strangers. I love this place. In fact, I love Chick-fil-A so much that if I'm near you and I overhear someone saying something like, Zaxby's is so much better than Chick-fil-A, I will interrupt your conversation and we will have a debate. And I will explain to you exactly why Chick-fil-A is better than Zaxby's and any other chicken restaurant. I just will, because when you love something, you talk about it, right? You defend it. You're not worried about what people might think. And here's what I've noticed in all my years of talking about Chick-fil-A. No one's ever said to me, Matt, all this Chick-fil-A talk, that's gotta stop. It's over the top. It's too much. We get it, right? You love Chick-fil-A. Enough of that, man. Keep that Chick-fil-A nonsense to yourself. We don't care. No one's said that. And you know why no one's ever said that? No one's ever said, man, will you please stop talking about it? Because people know that when you love something, it's only natural that you talk about it. It's only natural that you share what you love with other people. And yet, when it comes to talking about Jesus, well, a lot of us just can't seem to find the words. But when you look at the earliest accounts of people talking about Jesus, you'll discover that it's actually incredibly simple. In fact, the moment we're going to look at this morning, because we're going to look at a moment where somebody talks about Jesus, in the moment we're going to look at this morning, nobody preaches a sermon, nobody argues theology, nobody answers all the questions. Instead, someone says just 3 simple words. They say these words, come and see. Come and see. And these 3 words, believe it or not, change someone's life forever. Now, everything we're about to read comes from John's account of Jesus' life. And John, as many of you know, is one of Jesus' disciples. He had front row seats to all that Jesus said and did. And John tells us about a moment that happened not long after he himself began following Jesus. And the reason I want to look at this moment is because it shows us how ordinary people introduce Jesus to other ordinary people. And my hope is that when you see how simple it was way back then, you may realize that it's simple today as well. Here's how John begins this account. He says, the next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. That's really where his home base was. Finding Philip, he said to him, follow me. So Jesus has been ministering in the Jerusalem area, probably was down there for a festival, and now he heads back again to his ministry headquarters in Galilee. And when he returns, John lets us know that he runs into a man named Philip. And just to be clear, this is a different Philip than the one we talked about a couple weeks ago. This is a Philip, a friend of Andrew and Peter, like Jesus' disciples. And it would be so easy to skip over this phrase, but I love this phrase, finding Philip. Finding Philip. In other words, let me just make it clear. Philip doesn't go looking for Jesus. Jesus goes looking for Philip. Philip doesn't go looking for Jesus. Jesus goes looking for Philip. And honestly, that's what Jesus did for all of us, isn't it? Isn't that what he did for all of us? We didn't go looking for him. He went looking for us, and he found us. Now, you may think you found him. You may think you discovered him. You may think you bumped into him. You may say, like, I came to Jesus because I was missing something. Or I came to Jesus because someone invited me to church. Or I came to Jesus because my life was falling apart. But let me be perfectly clear. Jesus was moving towards you before you ever thought about moving toward him. He was moving in your direction before you ever thought about moving in his direction. And this is such good news because this means that Jesus is currently moving in the direction of people we know as well. People who don't know him, people who seem far away from him, people who from our perspective want nothing to do with him. And yet, Jesus is moving in their direction. He wants to find them in the same way he's found so many others. In fact, if I could say this about your friends, and maybe you don't think about it this way, but Jesus is looking for them. Jesus is moving in their direction. And again, this is such good news. All right, back to Jesus' words, because Jesus looks at Philip. And really, again, go back to what he said. He says two words. He says, follow me. He's just bumped into this guy, just meets him for the first time, and he says, follow me. And notice what he doesn't say, because I always like to say what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, understand everything, because Philip didn't. He just met him. He doesn't say, hey, get your life cleaned up first, and then you can be on my team, then you can follow me. He doesn't say, you're not quite ready, come back when you've figured everything out, when you've got your stuff together. No, he just says, follow me, join me, be on my team. Now, John doesn't give us Philip's response to Jesus, but we know what it is. Philip says yes. In fact, Philip becomes one of Jesus's 12 disciples. He becomes one of that core team. But John doesn't really want to tell us that part of the story because he has something else he wants us to know, something else that's interesting. He wants to tell us what Philip does immediately after meeting Jesus, immediately after following Jesus. And he begins with a little background detail. He says, Philip, like Andrew and Peter, two of Jesus' other disciples, was from the town of Bethsaida. Now, at first glance, this seems like a random detail, but I think when John tells us that Philip is from Bethsaida, this small fishing town, by the way, on the very north side of Galilee, he's letting us know that Philip grew up with Andrew and Peter. In fact, I think he's even implying that Andrew and Peter knew Philip from childhood, and Andrew and Peter are the ones that introduced Philip to Jesus. They're the ones that made sure that Jesus found Philip. And then we see that Philip has someone, he's been introduced to Jesus, and we see that Philip has someone that he wants to introduce Jesus to as well. Philip found Nathanael and told him, we have found the one Moses wrote about in the law and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. Philip's like, hey, you're not going to believe this, Nathanael, but we have found, myself, Andrew, Peter, we have found the one that's been talked about for years, for centuries, for millennia, like the one Moses talked about, the one the prophet said was coming. We found him, and his name is Jesus of Nazareth, son of Joseph. Now, I want you to notice, again, the very first thing Philip does, but the very first thing he does when he decides to follow Jesus is he doesn't attend a Bible study. And Bible studies are great, right? He doesn't enroll in a theology class, and we should all have great theology, solid theology. He doesn't spend 6 months preparing a presentation. Like, I got to get everything together. I got to know all the right words so I can tell all of my friends. No, he simply goes and finds someone he knows. He simply goes and finds someone he knows. And that right there begins to show us what it looks like to go. That shows us what evangelism is. Now, evangelism's got a bad reputation in our world today. In fact, a lot of people have negative connotation with evangelism because we think evangelism is standing on a street corner with a sign or a bullhorn saying things like, get saved or get microwaved, right? Turn or burn, those sorts of things. But you know what evangelism is? Just simply put, simply defined, here's what evangelism is. Evangelism is telling someone we love about someone we love. Evangelism is telling someone we love, a friend, a family member, a coworker, a classmate. It's telling someone we care about, someone we love about, capital S, someone that we love. That's it. It's not a sermon. It's not a debate. It's not even a presentation. It's talking about someone that we love. And again, we do this all the time. Some of you, you know this, you're Disney evangelists. You tell people that you love about this place that you love. Some of you, a lot of you, unfortunately, are Georgia Bulldog evangelists, right? I mean, you tell people about this team that you love, and you have to post about it. You go to the game, like you're always talking about it. Some of us, again, are Chick-fil-A, like me, are Chick-fil-A evangelists. We tell people about this place that we love. And this makes sense because when something means something to you, what are you going to do about it? You're going to talk about it. You're going to tell people about it. You're going to make a big deal about it. And this is what Philip does with Jesus. Again, let's look at what he says. We have found, Nathanael, we have found the one Moses wrote about in the law and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. And Philip is convinced, like, hey, Jesus, this guy, I just met him, but Nathanael, I promise you, he's the Messiah. There's something about him. It's different. He's the one we've been waiting for. And he's not shy about this. He's like, hey, we found him. The Messiah is here. Now, if you're Nathanael, that's a lot to take in, right? I mean, that literally generations and generations of your ancestors have been looking forward to this Messiah figure. That's a lot to take in. And Nathanael, as he hears this sort of speech, this conversation by his friend Philip, he gets hung up on one word. In fact, notice what he says. He says, Nazareth, can anything good come from there? I mean, Nazareth, like, can anything good come from there? Nathanael is not as convinced as Philip is, in other words. He's like, yeah, right. And truthfully, Nazareth was a small town, backwoods, hole in the wall kind of place. It was not an impressive place. Certainly not the kind of place you would think the Messiah would come from. So when Philip says, hey, I've met the Messiah and he's from Nazareth, well, Nathanael responds the same way I would respond if you told me the next president of the United States is coming from Auburn, Alabama. I would say, Auburn? Can anything good, as an Alabama fan, can anything good come from Auburn? There's no way. I don't believe that the next president of the United States is coming from Auburn, Alabama. Now, when Nathanael responds with this skepticism, and he's certainly skeptical, surprisingly, Philip doesn't argue with him. Philip doesn't call him a knucklehead, call him some kind of name. He doesn't debate with him. He doesn't try to make the argument that, hey, Nazareth is up and coming city, like Nazareth's underrated. He doesn't try to do any of those kinds of things. Instead, he responds with those three simple words I mentioned earlier. Remember what they were? Come and see. I get it, Nate. Like, I get what you're saying, but come and see. Philip doesn't do what so many of us would try to do in this moment. Philip doesn't try to win an argument. Philip doesn't try to answer every question. Philip doesn't try to explain everything about Jesus and why he's convinced that Jesus is the Messiah. Instead, he's like, Nate, why don't you come and see for yourself? Why don't you have a conversation with the one that I'm convinced is the Messiah? All he does is put, I think Philip understands something I think so many Christians miss. His job is not to convince Nathanael. His job is simply to point people to Jesus. Not to win an argument or debate or impress them. It's just, no, why don't you come and see for yourself? That's all he does. Now, I can only assume that there's something convincing in the way that Philip says these three words. And I say that because Nathanael accepts his invitation. But then as he's walking up, before he even says a word to Jesus, Jesus speaks first. When Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said of him, "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." When Jesus sees Nathanael coming, he doesn't say what I would have said if I were Jesus. I would have led with this. "Hey, I heard you were talking trash about Nazareth. I heard you were making fun of my hometown. Like I heard you don't think, all those sorts of things." He doesn't stand up for the town he grew up in. That's irrelevant to him. Instead, Jesus again says, "Here, this person walking toward me is truly an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." Now, at first, it may seem like, oh, Jesus is just being polite. He's being nice. He's being kind. Like when you meet someone for the first time and he's just trying to get Nathanael to like him. That's what it seems like. But Jesus isn't trying to make a great first impression. He's simply telling Nathanael what he already knows about him. He's saying, "I know that you're an honest man. I understand that you're someone who tells it like it is." And Nathanael is that kind of person, right? I mean, he just said, Nazareth, can anything good come from there? I mean, he is a straight shooter. But Jesus isn't threatened by Nathanael's honesty. He admires it. In fact, if you didn't know, Jesus welcomes people who are honest, who are genuinely searching for the truth. He welcomes the skeptical. He invites them to ask questions. And I love this about Jesus. I love that Jesus loves Nathanael right where he is, questions and all. However, as soon as Jesus says this to him, Nathanael's a little taken aback. In fact, look at how Nathanael responds. He says, "How do you know me? How do you've never met me before? How do you know anything about me? How do you know that I'm honest? How do you know there's no deceit in me?" And this is a fascinating question because Nathanael's like, how do you know what kind of person I am? We've never met before. This is literally our first conversation. And yet you've read me like a book. And that's when Jesus reveals something about Nathanael that Nathanael didn't know Jesus knew. Jesus answered, "I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you." He's like, "Hey, I saw you while you were under that fig tree before Philip ever even engaged in a conversation with you and before Philip ever said, 'Come and see.' I saw you under the fig tree." Now, at first glance, it might seem as if Jesus is criticizing him in some way. He's like, Nathanael, I saw you smoking that cigarette under the fig tree, right? No, it's not that kind of thing. That's crazy. Instead, Jesus is more or less saying, "Hey, I knew you. I knew where you were before you ever even knew who I was. I've known you from birth. Like I know everything about you, Nathanael. I saw you under that fig tree, and I've seen you your entire life." Now, we're not really sure what this moment of the fig tree was all about. John doesn't really tell us, and it doesn't really matter. Nathanael, though, understands immediately that Jesus somehow has seen into his innermost being. He knows things about him, and maybe he was meditating on a specific psalm. Maybe he was chewing on some Old Testament prophecy about the Messiah. We don't really know. But it tells us that Jesus doesn't just know about people. He's not just aware of people. Jesus actually knows people. He's created us. He made us. He knows everything about us. He doesn't just know about us. He's not just familiar with us. He knows our innermost thoughts. He knows everything about us. He knows where we've been. He knows what we've done. He knows what we're wrestling with. He knows what we're thinking about. He knows everything about us. And Nathanael in this moment realizes that he's not standing in front of just an ordinary man. In fact, notice Nathanael's response. This is so quick. which tells you whatever he was thinking about under the fig tree was something that no one else knew about. Then Nathanael declared, Rabbi or teacher, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. You are, in other words, the Messiah. Now think about how quickly things have changed, right? Just a few minutes earlier, 5, 10, 15, I don't know how long, but he'd been saying, Nazareth, give me a break, Phil. Can anything good come from Nazareth? I don't think so. And yet now he's like, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. That's quite the turnaround, isn't it? Nathanael, and so the reason for that turnaround is simple, because Nathanael has just had a personal encounter with Jesus. And in that moment, Nathanael goes from a skeptic to a believer. And when someone truly encounters Jesus, this is what happens. Skepticism can turn into belief. It doesn't always, but skepticism can absolutely turn into belief. Questions can turn into conviction. Doubt can turn into faith. And some of you know this personally because that's your story. You were the skeptical one. You're the one who had all the questions. You're the one who doubted that Christianity was real, that Jesus was who he said he was. But then someone said, come and see. And you met Jesus yourself and everything changed. Your life was made new. But remember, and this is what I want to overemphasize this morning. The only reason Nathanael ever meets Jesus is because there was someone, Philip, who said, Nate, come and see. Nate, I love you, and you're one of my best friends, and you have to come and meet this person who I am convinced is the Messiah, is the Son of God. Now, with all that said, so interesting, right? So interesting. But what does all of this have to do with all of us? I mean, how do we bring this forward? Well, just like Philip helped Nathanael meet Jesus, God wants to use us to help the people in our life meet Jesus too. And this conversation is so encouraging to me because it tells us that you don't have to have all the answers. I'm not saying it's wrong to have some answers. I'm just saying you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to win an argument. You don't have to be a Bible expert. All you have to do is what Philip did so many years ago. All you have to do is say, come and see. That's it. Come and see. And if you didn't know, this is the absolute best time of the year to say these words, because next weekend, all across the 478, thousands and thousands of people who don't normally go to church are going to be thinking about going to church. In fact, because it's Easter, some of your friends who might normally say no to your invitation to come and see will absolutely say yes to your invitation to come and see. And here's what I know that maybe you don't know, or maybe you've not thought about. Some of them are searching. Some of them are spiritually curious. Some of them are interested, more interested than you could ever imagine. And some of them are waiting for someone who loves them enough to invite them to come and see. And that's where all of us come in, isn't it? Because, and this has been not just as you read the Gospels, you read the accounts of Jesus' life, but even to this day, God uses found people to find people. God uses found people to find people. God uses people who've already been rescued from their sin to help others be rescued from theirs. He used Philip to find Nathanael, and he wants to use you to reach someone in your life. And honestly, this is what Let's Go looks like for most of us. Not a plane ticket to the other side of the world. Not a microphone on a stage, just a conversation, an invitation. Come and see. So this week, who are you going to say, come and see to? Now, I'm going to apply this more specifically because some of us, I think, already have someone in mind. There's a name that's already just swimming around, maybe multiple names swimming around in your head. You're like, I need to invite this person to one of our Easter services. I need to say, come and see to this person. You have someone who God has put on your heart. Again, a friend, a coworker, a classmate, a family member. Their name has already popped in your head. And here's your responsibility. Here's all that I think you need to do. Send the text, make the call, inbox, the person, send the invitation in some way. Just say something like this. It doesn't have to be complicated. A modern version of come and see is something like this. Hey, would you come sit with me at one of our Easter services? Would you come join me at Southside for Easter? And please understand, I'm not asking any of you to explain everything about Jesus. I'm not asking you to answer all the potential questions they may have about Christianity. I'm not even asking you to make the case that Jesus is the Son of God. I'm just asking you to say, come and see. Because the reality is, and this should be so freeing for us, this next statement. You don't have to know everything about Jesus to talk about Jesus. You don't have to know everything about Jesus to talk about Jesus. Philip certainly didn't, right? He just met him. He's going to spend the next 2-3 years of his life with him. He's going to learn so much more. Philip doesn't know everything about Jesus. He just says, hey, come and see. He knew enough about Jesus to say, hey, you need to come and see. And that's your job too. That's your responsibility too. Come and see. Maybe it's this, come and see what Jesus is doing in my marriage. Come and see what Jesus is doing in my life. Come and see what Jesus is doing in our church. And some of us, again, we already have someone in mind, and we just extend that invitation. Now, some of us, though, another group of us, are afraid it will be awkward, right? This is what we're nervous about. We're afraid it's going to go south. We're afraid it's going to get awkward. We're nervous about what's going to happen. And I get that. Like, nobody loves awkward conversations. Nobody loves uncomfortable conversations. And it's possible. It is certainly possible that someone might even say to you something along these lines. They won't say it exactly like this, but this is what they're saying. Can anything good come from visiting your church? That's what some people are. Can anything good come from joining you on one of those Easter services? Again, they may not say it exactly like that, but that's what you'll hear. But at the same time, what if you extend the invitation, make the ask, and invite them to that service, and they say yes, and it becomes the turning point of their life? What if that happens? What if you say, come and see, and they come and see, and they realize for the first time who Jesus is and what he's done? Won't that be worth that little bit of awkwardness? Won't that be worth just that little bit of tension, that uncomfortable tension in your life? Absolutely, it will. And that's what happened with Nathanael, right? One simple invitation from Philip led him straight to Jesus, and that changed his life forever. And then finally, I think some of us, just to be honest, whether you're in the room or watching online, some of us have never come and seen for ourselves. Some of us have never personally decided to follow Jesus. Now, maybe it seems like you're following Jesus because you're here more Sundays than you're not. Maybe you feel like you're following Jesus because you know and enjoy singing the songs. You enjoy walking around the room and meeting all the people. Like maybe because you've gone to church your whole life. Or maybe you're the opposite. Maybe it's obvious to you you're not following him at all. You're here because mom makes you, or grandma makes you, or somebody you're living with makes you. Either way, if you've never personally trusted Jesus, if you've never decided to follow Jesus, your decision is simple too. You need to come and see. You need to really look, investigate who Jesus is and what he says about himself. You need to, if I can say it this way, you need to come and see for yourself. Because some of you, all you see is church. All you see, unfortunately, is maybe religion dressed up in something. No, you need to see Jesus. That's who we try to point people to every single week around here. You need to look at his life, what he said about himself. And when you do, if you do, I think you'll discover that the same Jesus who saw Nathanael under that fig tree sees you today. He knows your story. He knows your background. He knows things about you that no one else knows. And yet, he loves you right where you're at. He wants a relationship with you. He invites you to turn from your sin and surrender everything to him and make him Savior and Lord. He's inviting you to follow him the same way. He invited Philip and Nathaniel and so many others to follow him as well. Now, Nathaniel, obviously, we've just talked about this, made his decision. It was a no-brainer for him. It was obvious. He realized right then and there that Jesus was the Messiah, that Jesus was the Son of God. But what are you going to do? If there's never been that moment when you've responded, when are you going to respond? Because I hope that you'll respond before it's eternally too late. Because here's the thing, you can walk away from Jesus. Many have. You can just stand at a distance and admire Jesus and appreciate Jesus, show some respect to Jesus, or you can bow the knee to Jesus. You can acknowledge that he is Savior and Lord, that he is God. You can say yes to a relationship with him today. One last thought. You know, we've been making a big deal about inviting people to our Easter services, and we're wearing the shirts, right? And we're giving you the cards, and we're encouraging you to invite people. And just to be overly clear, this is not so that we can have massive crowds in all our buildings, although I want a lot of people here, right? But the reason I want people here is so that I can introduce them to Jesus. So we can make the ask. We can ask them to surrender everything to the one who gave up his life for them and prove that he was who he said he was through his death, burial, and ultimately his resurrection. That's why I want people here. And that's why you should want people here. So people will hear who Jesus is and what he's done. And again, for a lot of you, there's already a name on your mind. And if there is, make the call. Send the text, extend the invitation. Just to give you another example of what your text could look like. Hey, I was thinking about you today. This is a text you can send out. Maybe some of you need to take a picture of this. Hey, I was thinking about you today. Send it this week sometime. I was wondering if you would like to join me at Southside for one of our Easter services. That's easy. All of us can do this. All of us can extend that invite. All of us can ask someone we love to come with us. Ultimately, so we can point them to someone we love even more. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is not preach a sermon or sing a song or make eloquent arguments for who Jesus is and why he's the best alternative for your life. Sometimes the best thing you can do is say what Philip said all those years ago. Come and see.